The gate on Forest Road 19 was chained the way I had left it. I was on the wrong side of it, in the dark, with my hand on the radio, and no intention of keying it. Cole was calling my name from up the draw. Cole was not up the draw. He had been gone about 40 minutes by then. Nobody had told me that. I knew it the same way I know the bottom stair of my own basement in the dark, without counting in my feet. Wes. Off to the right, past the first bend, where the timber came down close to the road. Wes, I'm hurt. I'm off the trail. It had his voice, not near his voice, his voice. The little scrape in it from the cigarettes he swore to his wife he had quit. The way he always came down soft on the front of my name like it was a question he already had the answer to and was asking me anyway to be polite. I did not answer. That was the only thing I had left that still worked, the not answering, and it had cost me the whole mountain to learn it. The creek was running behind me, Ruby Creek, low for October, but running. That was all I could hear that I trusted. Everything the woods make at night, the ticks and the settles and the small movements, all of it had gone somewhere else and left the creek alone in the dark. And I knew what that meant now, because it had spent 3 weeks teaching me. Wes, please. Closer. It had come that distance without a sound, no boot on rock, no brush against brush, nothing that moving is supposed to make. I can see your light. I turned my headlamp off. The Pruitt call came in on a Tuesday, the first week of October, while I was doing the thing I did every October, which was not filling out the retirement papers Shell had left on the kitchen table under the salt shaker so I would see them when I got my coffee. 22 years with the Forest Service, 15 of them in the Ruby Creek District in the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon, and the papers said I could stop anytime I wanted, and Shell had signed her part in blue pen and left mine blank. I had carried them out to the truck and back 3 mornings running and had not signed them. That was where my head was the Tuesday the phone rang. On a blank line and a blue signature, and the particular way my wife could say a whole argument by moving a piece of paper 4 inches. Ruth was on dispatch. Ruth had been the voice on that radio for as long as I had been in the district, and longer, and I could tell her whole day by the first 2 words she said. Wes, honey, not a good day then. Go ahead. I've got an overdue party out of Cold Springs. Couple, Ray and Dana Pruitt, out of Walla Walla, were due back Sunday night. Sister called it in 20 minutes ago. She sat on it a day because they've gone dark on her before. I wrote the names on the back of my hand with a pen that was mostly dead. Ray, Dana, Cold Springs. I had a notebook. I always wrote the first name on my hand anyway. Shell said it was because I was afraid of losing the notebook, and I said it was because a hand does not run out of batteries, and we were both right, and neither of us had ever said the real reason out loud, which was the Beckett boy, whose name I had written on the back of my hand 8 years before and had not been able to wash all the way off for a week. Cold Springs. To where? I said. Sister thinks the Ruby Creek loop. Says Dana posted about wanting to do the Meadow 6 mile. They register? There was a small quiet on the line. Ruth knew what the quiet meant to me and let me have it before she filled it. No permit on file, Wes. I looked out the station window at the light going flat and gold across the top of the ridge, the way it does in October, when the year decides it is done being generous. 6 Mile Meadow was a good long day in and a hard day out, up the drainage, and the drainage was the part of my district I liked the least, and had never had a reason I could say out loud for liking the least. Good country. Water, game, a meadow at the top that people drove 400 miles to see, and a feeling, if I am being plain about it, that I had always put down to the walls of the thing. The drainage ran narrow and deep between 2 benches, and the sound came down those walls wrong. I have stood in the bottom of it and heard a truck up on 19, like it was right beside me, and heard a man 40 feet off, like he was clear across the valley. I had told myself for 15 years it was the walls. I still think it was partly the walls. The walls were how it got in. I'll take Cole, I said. We'll start tonight, get a camp, run it proper at first light. He's already in the lot, Ruth said. Saw him pull in, Wes. Yeah. Sister said something. Probably nothing. Said when she called Dana's phone, it rang. 4. 5 rings, then it picked up. and there was noise on it, and then it hung up. She thought maybe a pocket. No service up there, though, so it went to voicemail, and she heard the recording start. Maybe, Ruth said. That's what I said, too. I put the phone down, and I did not think about it again for a while, and it was the kind of thing that only looks like a mistake later, from the far side, where everything looks like a mistake. Cole was in the lot leaning against my truck with 2 coffees, because he had heard it on the radio, same as I had, and because that was Cole. 6 years we had run the district together. He had come to me as seasonal, a kid out of a 2-year program with a beard he could not quite grow and a way of talking to lost hikers that I could not have taught him in 20 years, soft and slow, like he had all the time in the world, which out there is about the most valuable thing there is to fake having. He was 31 now. He had a wife named Steph and a baby coming in the spring, and he had put in for my job for when I finally signed the blue line. And I had written the recommendation myself and not told him yet. And that was the thing I was carrying that October, besides the papers. That the district was going to be his. That I was glad. That being glad about it felt like standing in a river in waders and feeling the gravel go out from under my boots 1 stone at a time. Pruitt's, he said, and handed me the coffee. No permit. No permit. Cold Springs? 6 Mile, we think. Ruby Creek Loop. He looked up the mountain the way I had looked up the mountain. He did not like the drainage, either. We had never talked about it. 2 men who know the same thing about a place and do not say it to each other, that is its own kind of conversation, and we had been having it for 6 years. Weather's clear through the weekend, he said. That's something. If they're just turned around or somebody rolled an ankle, clear weather buys us a lot. That's what I told Ruth. Then why do you look like that? I did not have an answer for him that I would say out loud, so I gave him the answer I would say. Because they didn't register, I said, and people who lie about where they're going, they lie for a reason. And the reason is usually that where they're going is someplace they know they're not supposed to be. Cole nodded and drank his coffee, and neither of us said the other thing, which was that the drainage did not need a reason. We loaded in the failing light. We were not 2 men in sport coats. I had 15 years in that country, and Cole had 6, and we packed like it. Wool base layers, 'cause it was going to drop below freezing at the meadow and cotton kills. 2 headlamps each, and spare cells. The good radios. The ones that could hit the repeater on Dead Man Bench when the handhelds could not, and a sat phone in a dry bag, because cell service in the drainage was a rumor. A real first aid kit. The kind with an aluminum splint and a way to close a wound, not the drugstore kind. Bear spray, both of us. And I carried a sidearm, a .40 caliber I had carried for a decade, because a ranger in that country who does not carry one is a ranger who has never had a cow elk come apart in front of him from a wound. Some road hunter gave it and left, and had to be the one to finish it. Cole carried one too. We were not going up there to be afraid. We were going up there to do a job we had done between us more times than I could count, and had done well, and had mostly, though not always, brought people home from. Mostly, though not always. I had been carrying the always not for 8 years, and his name was Danny Beckett, and he was 9 years old the last time anybody put eyes on him up a different drainage in a different October, and we never found so much as a shoe. I thought about him on the drive up, the way I thought about him on every drive up, which is to say, I did not let myself think about him and thought about nothing else. Shell knew. Cole knew some of it, the way partners do, without the details. The country was full of Danny Becketts, is the thing. Every ranger has one. Some have more than one. It is the tax on the good days, and I have paid mine in the dark, driving with a name written on the back of my hand in pen that would not wash off. We left the truck at Cold Springs a little after 7, with maybe an hour of usable light, which was enough to get us up onto the first bench and make a camp we could run the search from at dawn. The Pruitt's vehicle was in the lot, a gray Outback with Washington plates, and a fine coat of road dust and pine pollen on it that told me it had sat there since the weekend, which fit. I put my hand on the hood out of habit. Cold, of course. I looked in the windows. A phone charger cord in the console. A paper coffee cup in the holder. A paperback face down on the passenger seat. A thriller, the kind that gets bought in an airport. A fleece jacket thrown over the back seat. Nothing wrong with any of it. A couple who had parked shouldered their packs and walked up into my district on a Bluebird Saturday to see a meadow and had not come back down. The trail register was at the trailhead in its wooden box, and I checked it the way I check everything, because the register is a document, and documents do not lie unless a person makes them. And I have learned to read the person in the lie. The Pruitts had signed it. That surprised me a little, given they had skipped the permit. But there it was, in a round, careful hand, a woman's hand, Ray and Dana Pruitt, Cold Springs, to 6 Mile and back, out Sunday, and under where they wanted to go. In the same round hand, a thing that was not information, that people sometimes write in a register and sometimes do not, and that I had read 1,000 times and that had never once, until that October, meant anything but a person being a person. Beautiful up here, quiet. I stood and looked at that for a second, longer than it deserved. Quiet. It was the kind of thing a person writes when they are happy and the country is big and they want to leave a little of their happiness in a box on a post for the next person. That word has kept me up nights since. I did not think about it at all then. I closed the register and put it back and clipped the box shut, and we started up the trail with the light going. And that was the first day, and nothing happened on it. And I would give a good deal to have more days like it, where nothing happened, where a word was only a word. We made the bench by dark and made a cold camp, no fire, because a fire ruins night eyes, and I wanted mine if a light showed up. The drainage, which is the thing every searcher hopes for on the first night. A light, a fire, a headlamp swinging, the found thing that ends it early. Nothing showed. The drainage went black below us, the way a drainage does. From the bottom up, the dark pooling in the creek bottom first and rising, and the last of the light hanging on the meadow at the top like the water in a tub going down slow. We ate cold and got in the bags, and for a while, before he slept, Cole talked low, the way men do in a cold, dark camp, when things come out that would never come out in daylight across the desk. He talked about Steph. The baby was a boy they had found out the week before, and he was scared of it the good way. He wanted the boy so bad he could not believe he was going to get to keep him. He said Steph wanted him to slow down, to stop taking the winter avalanche work, the dangerous money, now that there was going to be 3 of them. He said he did not know how to slow down, that slowing down was not a thing he had ever learned, and he asked me how I had done it with Katie, how the work in a family stay whole in the same 2 hands. I did not have a good answer, because I am not sure I had done it, because there was a version of Shell's face across a kitchen table with retirement papers on it that suggested I had not done it as well as this kid thought I had. So I told him the truth, which was that I had not done it perfectly, that I dropped things, that I missed things, that Katie learned to ride a bike the week I was on a fire 200 miles from home and I got a photograph of it instead of the thing itself, and that I carried it and decided the carrying was worth it, and that he would have to make the same call himself, and there was no shame in either answer, only in letting the years make it for him. And I almost told him then. I had the recommendation written already, sitting in a drawer at the station, the letter that would make the district his when I signed the blue line, and he had put in for the job not knowing I had already handed it to him in my heart, and I lay there in the dark with the thing in my mouth, ready to say it. "This will be yours, kid." I made sure of it, and I did not say it. Partly it was that a thing like that deserves daylight and a handshake, not a mumble and a cold bag. Partly it was superstition, the old backcountry superstition against counting a thing before it is yours, against saying the good thing out loud where the mountain can hear it. And partly it was that saying it would have made the ending of my own time real, would have started the clock on the last of it, and I was not ready, and so I held the good news like a warm thing on a cold night. Close and unshared. One more day. I should have said it. He should have gotten to hear that about himself. while there was still time, but I did not know there was a clock running on him too, a shorter one than mine, and I lay there with the gift unopened between us. And after a while, Cole's breathing went slow and even, and he slept. Cole always slept in 10 minutes, the way the young can sleep anywhere. I lay and listened to the country, which is a thing I do, a thing 15 years put in me, an inventory I run without meaning to. Creek, wind in the pine on the far bench, a hiss moving off south, an owl, the kind that asks the question, way down the drainage. A pine cone came down through the canopy somewhere close and hit with that sound they make, too loud for what they are, and my heart did the small thing hearts do and then settled, because I knew the sound, because I knew all the sounds. That was the inventory. Everything on it accounted for. I went to sleep counting the things I could hear and finding all of them where they belonged. And if someone had told me that in 3 weeks I would be standing on 19 in the dark having turned my own light off to keep a thing from finding me by it, I would have told them to lay off the drainage. It gets to people, it is only the walls. The first morning we ran it right. We split the loop, Cole taking the high side along the bench and me taking the creek, both of us calling, both of us reading the ground. And we closed on 6 Mile Meadow from 2 directions by noon, and we found their camp. It was a good camp, a competent camp. A 2-person tent staked square and tight, guyed out against the wind that comes across that meadow, the way a person stakes a tent when they know what they are doing. A bear hang, done right, high and away, the food bag hauled up between 2 trees, at the correct dumb height that means somebody had read the pamphlet and believed it. A little stove, folded and stowed. 2 camp chairs. It was the camp of people who were fine, people who were coming right back, and it was empty, and had been empty, from the cold of the ashes in their fire ring for the better part of 3 days. I stood in the middle of it and did the thing I do, which is nothing, for a while. I did not touch. I did not call out yet. I stood in the center of the last place they were and let the place tell me the order of what happened. Because a camp is a document too, and this one was talking to me, and I was reading it wrong. Because I was reading it as a search and rescue camp, and it was not that. It was the first page of something I did not have the language for yet. Their boots were gone. That was the thing that stopped me. 2 people, and their heavy jackets still in the tent, and a headlamp in the tent, and Dana's, I would learn, and her open pack, her wallet, and her phone. But the boots were gone. They had walked out of that camp in their boots and left everything a person takes when they mean to be away from camp any length of time at all, and it was not raining, and it was not warm, and it made no sense. And I said so, out loud, to Cole, who had come down off the bench and was standing at the edge of the camp with a look I did not like. They walked off in their boots and left their coats, I said, in October, at the meadow. Wes, Cole said. He was not looking at the camp. He was looking at the tree line on the north side of the meadow where the timber started again and the ground tipped up toward the notch. Come look at this, and tell me it's elk. I went and looked, and I did not tell him it was elk, because it was not elk. The ground at the tree line was soft from a seep, black and holding, the kind of ground that takes a print and keeps it, and there were prints in it, 2 sets. The Pruitts by the size and the tread, going into the timber, toward the notch, away from the meadow and the trail and the truck and every sensible thing. That was not the part that stopped me. People walk the wrong way. Turned around, chasing a sound, following what they think is the trail. The part that stopped me was between the 2 sets of prints and a little ahead of them, in the same black mud, a 3rd track that I looked at for a long time and then crouched down and looked at longer, because I have spent 15 years learning the animals of that country by the marks they leave, and I did not know what had left this. It was not a bear. I know bear. It was not a cat. It was long, longer than my hand and then some, and it was deep at the front, the way a thing is deep when it carries its weight forward. And the marks at the front of it where the toes should be were not spaced like toes, they were spaced like nothing. I told myself it was 2 tracks, and I would tell myself the same thing again, because it was the right call for what I knew, which was almost nothing. An elk had come through, and a print had fallen partly over another print, and the mud had slumped the way wet mud slumps, and my eye was making one strange thing out of 2 ordinary things, because that is what an eye does when it is tired and a little spooked at the top of a bad drainage on the 3rd day of a search that is starting to smell like a recovery. Elk, I said, over deer, over the slump. 2 prints reading as one. Cole looked at me. He wanted to believe it as much as I did, which is a thing that helps a lie between 2 people stand up longer than it should. Sure, he said. He did not believe it. Neither did I. But we were rangers, and we had a job, and the job was the 2 people who had made the human prints, not the 3rd thing, so we followed the human prints into the timber and we called their names. And that is when I heard Dana Pruitt for the first time, though I would not know until much later that it was her voice I was hearing, because I had never heard Dana Pruitt say a word in her life. It came from ahead and to the left, up toward the notch. A woman's voice, thin, the way a voice gets thin over distance and through timber. Help, please, we're up here. Cole's head came up. We had both heard it. A man alone can talk himself into a voice. 2 men do not hear the same voice out of the same patch of trees at the same second unless there is a voice. We heard it. We moved toward it. We move the way men move when a search turns, when 3 days of dread come off all at once because they are alive. They are up there, hurt maybe, but alive and calling. And everything in him that has been braced for a body goes loose and glad and fast. Keep talking, Cole said, loud enough to carry. We're coming to you, Rangers. We hear you. Help, the voice said. Please. We're up here. The same words, the same shape to them. I did not mark it then. A frightened person says the same words, over and over. A person who has been calling for 3 days into an empty drainage has worn their calling down to a groove. A few words, over and over, all they have left. We closed on it. We came up through the timber to the little flat under the notch where the voice had to be coming from, where a person would be, and we came up calling, and there was no one there. There was no one there, and there was no sign of anyone there. No crushed ground, no dropped gear, no place a person had sat or lain or waited, nothing. An empty flat under a rock face with the wind moving through it. And while we stood in the middle of it, turning in slow circles and calling, the voice came again. It came from behind us, from back down the way we had come, from the ground we had just walked over, the ground we had just cleared, where there had been no one, where we would have walked within 10 feet of anyone there. Help, please, we're up here. I have run a lot of country. I know what sound does in that drainage. And this is the explanation I built, standing on that flat with the hair up on my arms, and Cole's face gone the color of the rock. It was a good explanation. It was the explanation any competent person builds. And I built it before I built anything worse, because we could not have known yet, not from this. The walls of the drainage bounced sound. The notch above us was a natural funnel, rock on 3 sides. A voice coming up from below could hit that rock and come back down, and seem to come from the rock, from above, from behind, from anywhere. I had heard a bull elk bugle in that drainage once, and would have sworn on my daughter it was 2 elk on opposite benches, and it was one animal in one spot, and the walls had made 2 of him. That was what this was. The Pruitts were down the drainage somewhere, alive, calling, and the walls were throwing the sound up to us and behind us, and turning one voice into a voice that came from the wrong place. It's the walls, I told Cole. Same as the elk. She's below us. Sounds coming up and bouncing. Then why did we hear it up here first? Cole said. He was not arguing. He was asking me to make it hold. That is what a good partner does when he is scared. He handed me the weak place in my own explanation and asked me to shore it up so we could both keep standing on it. Because sound's a liar in here, I said. You know that. We both know that. That's the whole drainage. Come on. She's below us, and she's alive, and we're wasting her light. So we went back down. We went down calling toward where the sound had to be coming from, and we ran the bottom of that drainage until dark, both of us, hard, the way we ran when we thought we had a live one, and we found her camp again, and we found her cold fire ring again, and we found the black seep with the prints going the wrong way again, and we did not find Ray or Dana Pruitt or anyone or anything that could have made a woman's voice say, "Help, please, we're up here," out of an empty flat, and then say it again out of ground where we had just been standing. We found the drainage, running its creek, keeping its walls, saying nothing it had not said for 15 years. I got Ruth on the repeater from the bench that night. I told her we had the camp, that it was 3 days cold, that valuables and gear were on scene and the party was not, that we had signed leaving the camp on foot toward the notch and had lost it in the rock. I told her we needed a full team at first light, and I told her to start treating it as a recovery, and my voice did the thing a voice does when it says that word, and Ruth heard it and did not say anything soft, because she is a professional, and gave me the copy back flat and clean, which is the kindest thing one professional can do for another over a radio at night. I did not tell her about the voice. It is the one thing from that first day I would do differently. I did not tell her because I did not have a word for it that would survive the trip up to the repeater and back. I had the walls. And the walls were true, or true enough, or the truest thing I had. So I put it in the box in my head where I put the things the country does that I cannot explain. The box every one of us keeps and none of us opens on the radio. And I clipped the box shut the way I had clipped the register shut. And I lay in my bag on the bench and ran my inventory of the night. And for the first time in 15 years, there was a thing on the inventory I could not set down where it belonged. A woman's voice behind us on ground we had cleared. I put it down anyway. I had to. It goes in the box or the job does not get done. I put it down and I slept some, and in the morning the team came up the drainage. 8 of us now, and we ran 6 miles the way it is supposed to be run. A grid, a real search. And by the end of that second full day, we had found the first of the things that would not fit in the box, no matter how hard I clipped it shut. But that was the next day. The first day, the day the box still closed, ended with me on the bench, awake, listening to a creek run alone through a country that had gone quiet around it, and telling myself it was the season. It gets quiet in October. The animals move down. That is all it was. The animals move down. They do. But not like that. Not all at once. Not in an order that moves toward a man. The second full day, the team found the rest of the Pruitts, or found what the drainage had left of the trail of them, which was not a body, which was never a body. And I have come to understand that the no body is the point. That the drainage does not make bodies, it makes absences. And an absence is worse to carry out on a litter because there is nothing to put on it. We ran the grid off the seep, following the 2 sets of prints into the timber toward the notch. And this time, in daylight, with 8 sets of eyes, we held the line and did not lose it in the rock. And it took us up and over into the little hanging draw on the north side, a place I had been maybe twice in 15 years, because there is no reason to go there. No trail, no water worth the name, just a fold in the mountain, full of blowdown and scree. And in that fold we found Dana Pruitt's jacket. It was a good jacket, a teal shell, the kind that packs down to nothing, and it was 30 feet up a talus slope wedged in the rocks, and it was torn, not worn, not caught and ripped on a branch the way a jacket gets when a person is moving fast and scared through timber. Torn in lines, 4 of them, down the back, even, spaced, clean through a fabric that is built not to tear. And I stood on that talus with the jacket in my gloved hands, and I made myself look at the tears and not look away from them. And I could not build the explanation. That was the first time. The seep track I had built at 2 prints. The voice I had built at the walls. The jacket I could not build. 4 even lines through ripstop, 30 feet up a slope, no animal climbs to hang a coat, and there was no blood in it. which should have been a mercy and was the opposite, because blood I could have understood. Cole came up the talus behind me. He looked at the jacket, and he did not say elk, and he did not say anything for a while, and then he said the thing that neither of us had said in 6 years. The thing that gets a ranger a reputation and a quiet talk from the district ranger about stress and the option of some time off. Wes, what makes marks like that? Nothing does, I said, because nothing did. And I could only carry nothing does in my hands on a talus slope for so long before I had to put it somewhere, so I put it in an evidence bag, and I marked the bag, and I photographed the site, and I did the procedure. Because the procedure is the rope I held when the ground went out from under me. The procedure does not care that nothing makes marks like that. The procedure has a box for the jacket and a form for the box, and I filled it out with a pen that worked, kneeling on the scree, and my hands were steady. My hands were steady. I had been doing this a long time. We worked the fold the rest of that second day, 8 of us on a real grid, arms reach apart, sweeping it slow, and the fold gave up its things one at a time the way a bad drainage does, holding them out and then taking the next one back. A trekking pole, aluminum, bent double, no tip, a water bottle, sun-faded, the label gone, and it was not the Pruitt's. It was old. It had been up there a season or more. A single boot, a man's, cracked and gray, the leather gone hard, laces rotted, and it did not match anything on the roster in my head. And I stood over it a while trying to make it fit and could not, and I bagged it and marked it and did not let myself do the arithmetic yet, because the arithmetic was a thing I could not do standing up, and the birds were gone. It came to me the slow way a stopped clock does, not by the sound, but by the missing of it. We had been in that fold 4 hours, and I had not heard a bird. No jays, and a fold like that is a jay's whole world. A jay would have been on us the second we came in, scolding, following us tree to tree the way they do, telling the whole mountain where the men were. No jays, no newthatch working a trunk, no chickadees fussing in the low brush, no squirrel cutting cones and dropping them, none of the small, constant business a living fold makes without a person ever noticing until it stops. No raven, and there is always a raven. A raven finds a search the way it finds a gut pile, from miles, on the wind. Nothing. I stood in the middle of 8 men turning over rocks in a fold on a bluebird October afternoon, and the only things making sound were us and the wind, and I built the explanation, because building the explanation is what I do, and the explanation was the season. It gets quiet in October, the birds move down ahead of the weather. That is true. It is the kind of true thing the drainage let me keep, the way it let the county keep a bad marriage and a cold old man, because that true thing was the best lock I had on a door I could not afford to open yet. Cole found the deer near the top of the fold, or found where a deer had been. A mule deer buck, a good one, 4 points, and it had died standing in a way that deer do not die, not run down, not shot, not winter starved, just down on its side in the scree, with its legs still under it, like it had been set there. And the part Cole called me over for was that nothing had touched it. A dead buck in that country is a feast. Coyotes, cat, the ravens I was not hearing, a bear moving to the dens, everything in the drainage should have been at that carcass, and it was days dead by the smell, and there was not a tooth mark on it. Every animal in the fold had walked around it. I have hunted and worked that country my whole adult life, and I know what it means when the animals will not touch a thing. It means the thing is sick. It means stay away. The animals know a wrongness before we do, and they had known this one and left, and I put that in the box with the boot and the missing birds, and I clipped the box, and I told Cole it was probably a lightning kill, which happens. A deer under a strike tree, and Cole said probably, and neither of us believed it. And that is where we were, the two of us, building probablys over a hole in the world, when Ruth got back on the repeater with the records. Ruth ran the plate on the gray Outback while we worked the fold, standard, and she ran the Pruitt's names, and everything came back clean and ordinary. A married couple from Walla Walla, no flags, a sister who was climbing the walls at home. But Ruth is thorough, and thorough is a thing that saves lives most days and costs sleep on the bad ones. And Ruth pulled the district's own file on Cold Springs and Ruby Creek going back, because that is the job. Looking for a pattern, looking for the other times, and she got back on the repeater that evening with a voice I'd heard from her exactly once before, 8 years before, on the Beckett search. Wes, I need you to just listen a minute and not say anything back until I'm done, because if you say something back, I'm going to lose my place. Go ahead, Ruth. Paula Trent, 51, out of Pendleton. Reported missing October last year. Vehicle at Cold Springs. Case worked 3 weeks, no subject. Closed as a voluntary walk-off. Because her marriage was bad and she'd talked about leaving and the theory was she left. That's one. Gerald Hoyt, 64, October 2 years back. Truck at the 19 gate. Hunting solo, no subject. Closed as exposure presumed. Body never recovered. That's 2. A kid, and I hate this one, a 19-year-old Tyler Cofield, 3 years back, September, told his mother he was going to camp the Ruby Loop, never came home. Vehicle never even found because he got dropped off, and that one never got worked as ours because there was no vehicle to tie it to the district. It just sat in a file in Pendleton as a runaway. That's 3, Wes. 3. All October, near enough. All Cold Springs or the 19. All no subject, and not one of them ever got tied to the other 2 because they came in one at a time, a year apart, to 3 different desks. And every single one of them had a reason that made sense by itself. A bad marriage. Old man alone in the cold. A kid who ran off. Every one of them closed clean. And I only got them because I went looking because of your voice last night when you said recovery. I did not say anything back because she had asked me not to, and because I did not have anything, and because the number 3 was sitting in my chest like a swallowed stone. 3 that we knew. 3 that had been close enough to a story to close, and the drainage had been running that whole time, keeping its walls, throwing its voices, and every October it had taken somebody, and every October the somebody had come with a reason attached. A bad marriage, or a cold night, or a young man's restlessness, a reason a tired desk could sign off on and go home. It did not take people who would be missed loudly. It took people who could be explained. The Pruitts could not be explained. That was the mistake it made, if it can make a mistake, and I do not know that it can. The Pruitts had a sister who would not stop calling, and a clean marriage, and a registered destination, and now a torn jacket in an evidence bag. And so, for the first time in who knows how long, the 3 separate reasons got laid down next to each other on Ruth's desk, and stopped being 3 reasons, and became a pattern, and a pattern is not a thing that closes. I talked to Dana Pruitt's sister that night on the sat phone from the bench because she had earned it, and because a family member who is climbing the walls at home is a danger to a search if she is left out in the cold with her imagination, and because it was the decent thing, and the decent thing and the smart thing were the same thing for once. Her name was Joan. She was in Walla Walla, and she had not slept since Sunday, and she wanted to drive up, and I told her the road was closed and she could not, and she cried. And then she got quiet and asked me the question the families always ask, which is whether I thought they were alive. And I did what I always did, which was not to lie and not to tell the truth, but to find the narrow country between the 2 and stand in it. I said we were searching hard. I said the weather had been kind. I said we had a good team. All true. None of it the answer to her question. And then she told me the thing about the phone again, the thing Ruth had passed me on the first day and I had let go by, because on the first day it had been nothing. A pocket dial, a voicemail picking up. She said she had kept calling Dana's number every few hours, all week, because she could not stop. And she said that twice more it had done the thing, rung 4 or 5 times and picked up, and there had been breathing on it. And once, the last time, 2 days ago, she said Dana had said her name, just her name, Joan. And then it hung up, and she wanted to know how that was possible with no service up there, and she wanted it to mean Dana was alive. And I sat on that bench in the dark with the drainage below me, and I knew, the way I had started to know a lot of things I did not want to know. That a phone with no service and a 3 days dead battery does not ring and pick up and breathe and say a woman's name, and that whatever had said Joan into that sister's ear from the top of my district was the same thing that had said Dana off her own fire, and I told Joan to stop calling the number. I made my voice level, and I told her, whatever happens, do not call that number again, and do not answer it if it calls you. She asked me why. I said because it will not be Dana. And she was quiet a long time, and then she said, in a small voice, that she had thought it did not sound quite like Dana the last time, that it had been close but not quite. And I said that was because it was not. And I got off the phone before she could ask me the next question, because I did not have the next answer, or I had it and could not say it to a woman 400 miles away in the dark. The 3 old cases had sisters too, and sons, and one had a mother still living, and I made myself understand that the mercy the county had done those families, the clean closures, the bad marriage, and the cold night, and the runaway kid, had also been a door left open, because a family that has been told a person walked away is a family that keeps a porch light on, keeps a phone number active, keeps answering when it rings at an hour no one should be calling. And I thought about how many of them might have gotten a call over the years, 4 or 5 rings and breathing in a name, and had let themselves believe, and I could not stand it, so I did the only thing there was to do, which was the job. I did the next right things, one after another. I did not go up that mountain with a death wish. I had a sat phone and a chain of command in 15 years, and I used all 3. I closed the drainage. That night, from the bench, I got the district ranger, a good man named Hollis, who had come up the same way I had, and I told him what we had, the camp, the prints, the jacket, and Roost 3, and I told him I was closing Ruby Creek from Cold Springs to the meadow, effective at once, no permits, no day use, gate the 19, and he did not argue, because Hollis had run country too, and knew the sound of a man who had stopped guessing. We gated the 19 the next morning. We posted the trailhead. We turned people around. And some of them were unhappy, because a closed trail in Bluebird October is a thing people drive 400 miles to be unhappy about, and I turned them around anyway. Every one, because that is the job, and the job is not to be liked. And I called the county, and the county sent a deputy, because a possible multiple with human-caused wounds is not a Forest Service matter alone. Backup came. His name was Gil Roan, and he was maybe 40, a big calm man who had worked the county's piece of the blues for a dozen years. And he came up the 19 in a green county truck with a rifle in the rack and a hard case of gear. And he was not a fool, and he was not a cowboy. He was a professional. And when I walked him through the fold and showed him the tears and the jacket in the bag, he went quiet the same way Cole had gone quiet, and he said, I've hunted this unit 20 years. I've never seen sign like whatever made that. And then he did his job, which was to help, and I was glad to have him. Gil Roan did everything right. So did I. It did not matter to the drainage, and it never has, to any of them. We had Dana Pruitt's phone. It had been in her pack in the tent, dead, of course, 3 days dead, and I had bagged it. But Roan carried a field kit in his truck, a battery bank, and the right cables, because a county deputy who works the backcountry carries the things that pull data off a dead phone in the field. So we sat in the cab of his truck at the gate that evening with the phone on the charger and watched it come up. There was no passcode, which people who are happy and out of cell range often turn off. There were photographs. There was one video. I have watched the video more times than is good for me, and what happens on the screen is this, and no more than that, because it is the closest thing I have to proof, and it does not prove the thing I need it to prove. It only proves that I am not the only one it happened to. The video is 41 seconds, The timestamp is the Saturday night, a little after 8, so full dark. Dana is holding the phone. Her hand comes into the frame now and then, her wedding ring catching the firelight. She is filming Ray. Ray is sitting on a rock on the far side of their little fire, maybe 8 feet from her, and he is smiling, and he is saying something about the stars, that he has never seen stars like this, that they should have done this years ago, and it is a happy video. It is the video a happy person takes on the best night of a good trip to show a sister later. Ray is in the frame the whole time. His hands are in the frame. His mouth is in the frame. At 22 seconds, a voice says, "Dana." It comes from off to the left, from the tree line, from the dark past the edge of the firelight, and it is Ray's voice. It is the same voice that is at that exact moment on the screen talking about the stars, the same voice coming from the trees, saying her name, while the man it belongs to sits 8 feet away with his mouth closed around a smile that is just starting to fall. Ray hears it. The smile goes. He looks off to the left toward the trees, toward his own voice, and he starts to stand, and he says on the screen in his real voice, the voice from the right place, "Dana, don't." 2 words. And then the picture swings, because Dana has turned, because Dana is walking, the phone still in her hand and pointed down now, so the ground shows, her boots, the frost-stiff meadow grass going by, and Ray behind her getting louder. "Dana, Dana, hey," and her own breathing close to the mic, walking toward the trees, toward the voice, and right at the end, at 40 seconds, her own voice, soft, not scared. Wrong in how not scared it is, saying, "It's Ray, he's hurt, he's calling me," and Ray still yelling her name from behind her, from the fire, from the light, and the video ends. Roan and I sat in that cab and did not say anything for a while. The phone screen went dark on its own. Down the drainage the creek was running, and up above us the first stars were coming out, the ones Ray Pruitt had never seen the like of. And I thought about a thing wearing a man's voice to call his wife away from the fire, while the man himself sat right there in the light with his mouth shut. And I understood, sitting in that truck, that the walls did not do that. I had built the walls to hold the elk, and I had stretched them to hold the voice on the flat, and they would not stretch around this, and I let them go. To feel a thing I had believed for 15 years come loose did not feel like fear. It feels like the ground on a talus slope, 1 stone at a time, going. "That's not acoustics," Roan said finally. He was not asking. "No," I said. "Then what is it?" And I gave him the only true answer I had, which was the answer the drainage had been walking me toward for 2 days, 1 stone at a time. "It's something that learns a voice," I said, "and uses it to call the one person who'll trust it." Roan sat with the dead phone in his hand a while before we got out. He did not spook easily, and he was not a man who talked to fill a quiet, and so when he talked, I listened. He said he had 2 girls, 9 and 11, and a wife who taught at the elementary in the valley, and he said it like he was reminding himself what was waiting for him at the bottom of the mountain, what he was going back to. He said he had hunted the Ruby Creek unit since he was a boy, that his father had brought him up the 19 before there was a gate on it, and that he had always felt something about the drainage he had never had a word for and had put down, same as I had to the country being big and himself small in it. He said he did not have a word for it now either, but that it was not the same as not having a word for it before. Before, he said, the not knowing had been empty. Now it had a shape. Then he did the thing that told me what kind of man he was, which was that he squared it away and got to work. He did not ask to leave. Someone with more sense would have looked at that video and gotten in his green truck and driven down the 19 to his 2 girls and his wife and let the Forest Service keep its haunted drainage, and no one could have blamed him, and Gil Roan did not do that. He checked his rifle, he checked his radio. He asked me what the plan was for the morning and how he could be useful, because there were 5 people missing on that mountain by his count, and finding missing people was the job, and the job did not care that the thing taking them was a thing with no box on any form. I have wondered whether that steadiness was the best of him or the thing that killed him, and I have decided it was both, that they were the same thing, that the exact quality that made Gil Rohn the kind of man other men wanted beside them in bad country was the quality that walked him into the blowdown a day later behind a voice that had learned to say a word. The drainage does not take the careless. It takes the good ones. It takes the steady ones, the competent ones, the ones who check their rifles and think of their daughters and stay to help. He uses the best of a man against him. That is what it is for. We got out of the truck. It was full dark and cold, the dry cold that cracks lips, and Cole was up at the tent line at the gate camp doing the evening radio check with Ruth, and I could hear him 40 feet off, his half of it. Ruby Base were secure at the gate, all present, going dark for the night, the ordinary words in his ordinary voice, and I started up toward him, and Gil Rohn started up beside me, and from the timber on the other side of the road, off to my right, past the first bend, in the dark, past the reach of the camp lights, Cole's voice said, "Wes." I stopped. Rohn stopped. Because Cole was up at the tent line 40 feet ahead of me, with the radio to his mouth, saying "going dark for the night" to Ruth, and his voice, his exact voice, the little rasp in it and the soft landing on my name, had just come out of the trees on the other side of the road behind me and to the right, from a place Cole was not. "Wes," it said again, from the trees. Patient, certain, the way he says it when he already knows the answer and is asking me anyway. "Wes, come here a second." Up at the tent line, Cole lowered the radio. He had heard it too. I watched him hear it. He turned and looked at the trees across the road and then looked at me, and a thing happened to his face that I had never seen in 6 years, and would give a great deal to unsee, and Gil Rohn beside me said, in a voice with nothing left in it but the flat, "That came from over there, and your boy's right up there, so who's that?" We did not go into the trees after it. It was the single most important thing I did that whole search, and it was a thing made entirely of not doing, which is the hardest kind of thing for men like us, who are trained our whole lives to go toward the voice that needs help. I said, "Nobody moves." I said it loud enough for Cole to hear it up at the tent line. "That is not Cole. Cole is up there. Rohn, you're with me. We hold at the light. We do not go to a voice. Not tonight, not any night up here. We go to a person we can see. That's the rule now. Say it back. Go to a person we can see," Rohn said. I raised my voice toward the tent line. "Cole, say it back." "Go to a person we can see," Cole said, down from the tent line, and that voice and the memory of his voice from the trees were the same voice, and I made myself hold both of them in my head at once, the real one and the copy, and I could not tell them apart, and that was the thing I had to build the next 3 days around, that I could not tell them apart by ear, that the ear was no good to me anymore. 15 years of running that country, by the sounds it made, the whole inventory, and it had all just turned into a liability, because the thing in the drainage had learned to put anything it wanted onto that inventory and set it down wherever it liked. The voice from the trees did not call again that night. I lay awake at the gate and listened to it not call, which is its own kind of company, and I worked the problem, because working the problem is what I have, instead of a way to stop being afraid. It learned voices. It had learned Dana's, or borrowed Ray's, well enough to walk a woman off her own fire. It had learned Cole's in 2 days, well enough to fool Cole. It used the voice to call the specific person who would trust it, by name, which meant it had our names, which meant it had been close enough to us, at the camp, at the gate, to take them, and it used the radio words. Going dark for the night. It had Cole's radio patter. It was listening to our radio. So the radio was the weak place. And the radio was also the only thing keeping 8 people and a deputy coordinated across the drainage. That 8 voices, the only line to Ruth and the repeater and the world below the gate. I could not give up the radio. But I could no longer trust the radio. And holding those 2 things at the same time, need it and cannot trust it, is the exact shape of the trap the drainage builds. And I did not fully see that yet. I saw a piece of it, I saw enough to do the next right thing, which was the challenge. I raised Ruth on the repeater before first light, and I told her, in as few words as I could, that we had a voice mimic in the drainage, that it had our names and our patter, that from now on no instruction over the radio got acted on until the person receiving it challenged and got the right answer back, and the answer would be a thing only the real person would know. Ruth did not tell me I sounded tired. Ruth did not ask if I was sure. 20 years on that radio, and she had heard me clip the box shut 1,000 times, and she knew what it cost me to open it on an open channel, and she said, "Give me the challenge, Wes." "Something nobody said on this radio," I said. "Something from before the radio. Ruth, what did I bring you the morning after Beckett?" The line was quiet a second. I had never said the boy's name on the air. I said it now on purpose, because the answer was a thing that existed nowhere but between the two of us, in a kitchen 8 years gone, at the worst dawn of both our working lives. "You brought me a maple bar," Ruth said, "and you didn't say anything, and you sat in the corner of dispatch for an hour, and then you went back out and looked for him another 9 days. That's the challenge," I said. Anybody gives you a instruction to relay, or you give one out, it carries the word maple or it's garbage. Anybody keys up in my voice or Cole's or Roan's and there's no maple, you log it and you do not act and you tell me. And Ruth, if you ever hear me say a thing that scares you, you ask me what I brought you. And if the man on the other end does not say maple bar, that is not me, no matter what it sounds like. No matter what it sounds like. "Copy," Ruth said. "Maple." And then, because she is who she is, "Wes, you come home off that mountain. You hear me. You didn't sign the papers. You come home and sign the papers." "Copy," I said, which was not a yes. She heard that it was not a yes. She let it go. There was a mountain to run and no arguing it on the radio at dawn. The challenge worked for a day. It means I was not a fool. It means the reasoning was sound, that a good plan bought my people a day of safety out of clear thinking. That morning the team came back up under the new rule, and we ran the north fold and the benches, careful, in pairs. Everybody with eyes on their partner at all times, nobody chasing a voice. Everybody challenging every call, and the drainage threw voices at us all day, and we caught every one of them, because none of them could say maple. A call came up in my own voice, to Cole, ordering him down off the high bench to the creek. Cole keyed back, "Say the word," and the radio gave him a long empty hiss, and then my voice again, patient, warm, saying, "Cole, it's fine. Come on down." And no word. And Cole did not go down. And Cole looked across the fold at me, standing right there next to him where I had been the whole time. And we both understood that the thing had just tried to split us, using my voice and my authority and the trust of 6 years, and had failed because of a maple bar. And for about 4 hours that afternoon, I let myself believe we were going to win. But it did not quit, and it did not throw the same voice twice, and by the middle of that day I understood I was watching a thing learn in front of me in real time. It learned the way a child learns, except a child learns to walk, and this one was learning how to take us. Its first tries that morning had been clumsy, a voice from the wrong slope, a searcher's name in a stranger's mouth, easy catches. By noon they were better, by afternoon they were almost good. It went after Dave hardest. His want was the simplest and the loudest, the easiest of all of them to read, which was that he was scared for his wife the way some men are always a little scared for the person they love, a low hum under everything. It gave him his wife. Her voice came over Dave's radio in the middle of the afternoon while the two of us were flagging a search sector, and it did not tell him to come into the trees. It had already learned that trick did not work. It told him she had been in a wreck on the 19 coming up to find him, that she was hurt, that she was asking for him, and it was a good copy, and it was a smart lie. Because it was not a lie that pointed at the mountain, it was a lie that pointed at the road, at the world, at the exact place anyone would run toward and not away. And Dave went white and started for his truck, and I got a fist in his collar the way I would later get one in Ellis's, and I said, "Challenge it. right now, before you take one more step. And he keyed up with his hand shaking and said, say the word. And the radio hissed, and his wife's voice said, David, honey, please. And no word, no Maple. And Dave stood there with his whole body pulled toward the road and did not go, because the word held. And then he sat down in the dirt and put his face in his hands, and I let him, because he had earned a minute after that. And I got on the radio to Ruth and had her call Dave's wife at her job in Elgin. And Ruth called back in 4 minutes and said his wife was at her desk, fine, never left town. And I made Ruth put the wife on so Dave could hear her real voice say his name from the real world. And that is what the word bought us that afternoon, over and over. It bought us the phone call that proved the lie was a lie. And every one of those calls, every challenge, every proof, we ran out loud on an open channel, and I knew it. I knew even then. I felt it start to go, one strand at a time, like a rope running out through my hands. Every time one of us said Maple to keep somebody out of the trees, we said Maple into the air. And the thing was in the air. It was in the radio. It had been in the radio the whole time. And I stood on that mountain doing the arithmetic I had refused to do over the dead buck and the gray boot. And the arithmetic was simple. The word was a sound. It learned sounds. We were teaching it the one sound that could kill us, and we could not stop teaching it because the teaching was the only thing keeping us alive. And there was no version of the protocol that did not carry its own undoing inside it. No word I could pick that would not be spoken aloud the first time we used it and learned the second. I thought about changing it, going to a new word, and I saw at once that a new word would last exactly as long as it took to say it 40 times, which is one day, which is what the first word had lasted. And I understood that the drainage had not beaten the protocol. The protocol had never been able to win. The protocol was a clock, and the clock had started the second I said Maple Bar into the air at dawn. And it had been running down all day in our own voices, and I did not know how much was left on it, and I did not tell my people, because there was nothing to tell them that would help. And a leader who hands his people a fear they cannot act on has only made them worse at staying alive. I was still holding the running down clock, the word I could not save and could not replace, when the light started to go, and Gil Roan keyed up to say he and Ellis would take the last sweep of the timber below the seat before dark. Then it learned the word. How it learned the word is nobody's fault, which is the drainage's whole method to arrange things so that the fault is nowhere and the loss is total. It learned the word because we said it. All day, up and down that drainage, on an open channel it was listening to, my people had been keying up and saying, say the word, and challenging and confirming, Maple, copy, you're good, dozens of times, because that was the protocol, because the protocol worked. And every single time we used the word to keep ourselves safe, we said it out loud into the air. The thing was learning from the protocol that protected us was also the thing that taught it the answer. By evening, it had heard Maple spoken on that radio 40 times in our own voices, and it did what it does, which is learn a sound and give it back. And there was no way to have run the protocol without teaching it the protocol, and there was no way to have kept us safe without the protocol. And that is the trap, the whole trap, that every correct thing we did to survive it was also a lesson we handed it in, how to take us. Gil Roan went out on the last sweep of that second day with a young searcher named Ellis, the two of them clearing the timber below the seat before dark, and I was at the gate on the radio when it took him, and I heard the whole thing, and I could not stop it, and I have played it back in my head every night since, and there is no place in it where I could have stopped it, and I have looked harder than I have ever looked at anything. It came over the repeater in Ellis's voice. Gil, I'm hung up in the blowdown. I'm stuck. My leg's pinned. I need you. And it was a good copy. And Roan was 30 feet from where Ellis had last been. And Ellis had been in the blowdown. It was all true. It was almost true. It was true in every part, except that Ellis was at that second standing right next to Gil Roan. and had not keyed his radio, and the voice was coming out of Roan's own radio, on Roan's own hip, while the man it belonged to stood at his elbow with his mouth shut. And Roan did the right thing. He did the exact thing I had drilled. He challenged it. I heard him key up, and I heard him say, hard and flat, the professional all the way down, say the word. And the radio hissed, and then Ellis's voice, close and hurt and scared, said, Maple, Gil, Maple, come on my leg, please. And it had the word. It had the word now. And Roan had built his whole trust on the word the way I had built it for him. And the word came back right. And so Gil Roan, who had done everything right, who had challenged the voice exactly as he was supposed to and gotten back exactly the answer that was supposed to mean safe, turned to the real Ellis standing beside him and said, I heard this part. Ellis told me after. He said, there's two of you. And then he went in the blowdown toward the voice that had the word, because the word was all any of us had, and the word was broken now. And nobody had told him the word was broken, because I had only worked it out myself an hour before and had not gotten to him yet, had not gotten to him in time, was an hour and a broken word too late. We found Roan's radio still keyed open at the edge of the blowdown, transmitting a flat hiss up to the repeater and out to all of us at once, so that his last few minutes played into every earpiece on the mountain. And there was not much on it, and what there was I will not put down, except that near the end there was a sound that was not Roan and was not Ellis and was not any animal I have heard in 15 years, a low 3-note sound, patient, almost like a question. The barred owl asks a question, and this was not the owl. And then the radio ran its open hiss until the battery died 2 hours later. And we never found Gil Roan, not his hat, not his rifle, which we did find 30 feet up a talus slope in the North Fold, wedged in the rocks the way Dana Pruitt's jacket had been wedged, up where no man drops a rifle and no animal carries one, and there was no blood on it. And I bagged it, and my hands were steady, because I had a young searcher named Ellis sitting on the ground beside me, shaking apart, and one of us had to have steady hands, and it was going to be me, because it was my drainage and my search and my broken word that sent a good man into the trees. That night I got Ruth on the repeater, and I told her Roan was gone, and I told her the word was gone with him, and there was a long quiet on the line, and then Ruth said, in a voice I had never heard her use, Then how do I know it's you right now, Wes? And I did not have an answer. That was the moment the trap closed all the way, and I felt it close, and it did not feel like fear. It felt like the gravel going out from under my boots, the last stone, the river taking my footing. The word was gone. The year was already gone. There was no way left for Ruth to know it was me, and no way left for me to know it was Ruth. And 8 people in a dead man's search were strung out across a mountain that 8 voices, holding radios that could no longer tell them the truth. And the dark was coming up, the drainage from the creek bottom, the way it always did, from the bottom up. And this time I did not have a single sound I could trust to put on my inventory. Not one. And up on the high bench, faint, patient, from a place none of my people were, something began to call the roll of us by name. It called Ellis first. The kid was closest to me at the gate, still on the ground where he had come apart after Rowan, and his mother's voice came down off the high bench and said, Ellis, Ellis, baby, where are you? And the kid was on his feet before I got a hand on him. I put him behind me, and I held his collar in my fist, and I said in his ear, Lo, your mother is in Pendleton. Your mother is asleep in a bed in Pendleton. That is not your mother. And he shook and he stayed, because I had his collar, and because some part of him under the terror still knew that his mother was in Pendleton. And I understood in that second what the walkout was going to have to be. It was going to have to be built out of things we knew that were truer than what we heard. Your mother is in Pendleton. Cole is beside me. Ruth is at her desk, the truth held in the fist, against the voice in the ear. I got them down. That was the next right thing, and it took most of what I had. There were 8 of us left after Roan, strung across the fold and the benches in the dark, and I got them onto the radio, and I told them the ear was no good, the word was no good, that nothing coming out of a radio or out of the trees was to be believed, that they were to hold their partners and come to the gate light and count off by touch when they got there, hand to shoulder, and challenge nothing and answer nothing and come to the light. And they came. It took 2 hours, and it cost more than it should have, because the drainage fought me for every one of them. It threw my voice at them, and Ruth's voice, and their own mothers and their own children. It emptied out whatever it had learned of all of us across 2 days and spent it all at once, trying to peel one searcher off into the timber, and I stood at the gate and talked them in through it. And I did not use a single word it could copy. I used the truths. Marla, your kids are at your sister's. Keep walking to the light. Dave, you can see my headlamp. Walk at the headlamp. Do not stop for anything that is not a headlamp. And they walked at the headlamp, all of them, and they came into the gate light 1 and 2 at a time, with their hands on each other's shoulders and their faces the color of the talus. And I counted them in, and I got them all 8. And for about a minute at the gate, with all of them around me in the light, I let myself believe I was going to walk everyone off that mountain. And that is the last time, that night, I believed anything. The hardest of the 8 to bring in was the oldest, a volunteer named Art Bell, a retired millwright who had been on the county search team for years and had buried his wife the spring before, and the drainage found that in him, the way it found the loudest want in each of us, and it gave him back his Carol. I did not know her name until he said it into the dark, over and over, Carol, Carol, in a voice I had not heard out of a grown man before, and out past the light his dead wife was answering him, calling him off toward the tree line, telling him she was cold, telling him to come and get her, and Art had stopped moving toward my headlamp and started drifting the other way, slow, like a man walking in his sleep. And the 2 younger searchers with him did not know what to do, because there is no arguing anybody out of their own dead. So I did not argue. I keyed up, and I said his name, and then I said, Art, Carol is buried in Riverview, next to the elm, and you put her there, and you were there when they closed it, and you know that, because you go every Sunday, and the woman in those trees is not your wife. Your wife is under the elm at Riverview, and she is at peace, and she would tear a strip off you for walking into the timber after a thing, wearing her voice. And there was a long, bad quiet, and I thought I had lost him. And then Art Bell said, cracked, small, she's at Riverview, and he said it again, Carol's at Riverview, under the elm. And he turned back toward my light, and he came down, saying it the whole way, Riverview, the elm, the true thing held against the voice. And when he got to the gate, he could not look at me, and I did not make him. That much he got to keep to himself in the dark. It was the one thing I had to give him. Because what gets people up there is never the voice from the dark. I had taught them all not to go to the voice from the dark. What gets them is the true emergency in the middle of the false ones, the real cry that cannot be told from the copies, and the drainage had been saving that, had been holding it back through 2 days of practice, and it spent it now. Marla went down. The searcher named Marla, at the edge of the gate light, in front of all of us, went down in the meadow grass with her leg wrong under her, a real fall. A post hole in the dark into an old, burnt-out root hole, and her leg broke, and I heard it break, and she screamed, and it was real. It was the realest sound on that whole mountain. A woman with a compound fracture 40 feet out in the grass, in the dark, and every part of my training stood me up and pointed me at her, because that is a person I can see, that is a person down, that is the job. And Cole got to her before I did. That is the exact machine of the place, and I did not see it in time because it was built not to be seen in time. Cole was faster than me and younger than me, and it was his district now, mine on paper still, but his in every way that the mountain measures. And he went to the real woman with the real broken leg out in the real dark. because that is what a good ranger does. That is what I made him. That is what 6 years of me standing beside him taught him to do. Without thinking, go to the person who was down. And I lost sight of him for 4 seconds. 4 seconds. The grass, the dark, the moving headlamps, Marla screaming. And when my light found the spot again, there was Marla on the ground, alone, her leg broken, alone. And Cole was not there. He had not screamed. Marla screamed, and I heard her leg break from 40 feet, and Cole was 10 feet closer than she was, and Cole made no sound at all. He was there, and then in the space of 4 seconds, and one woman's scream, he was not there. And the grass where he had been was empty, and out past it the timber started, and there was no sound from the timber. Not a footstep, not a branch, nothing. The drainage doing the thing it does, lifting one of us out of the middle of 8 people and 100 watts of light without a sound, taking the best of us, the one with the baby coming in spring, and leaving me the broken woman, and the empty grass, and the 7 faces turned to me to tell them what to do. I got Marla's leg splinted. It would have been easy in that minute to come apart, and I did not come apart. I knelt in the grass, and I ran the aluminum splint and the cravats the way I had 100 times, and my hands were steady. And I did it because Marla was a person I could see and a person I could help, and doing it was the only thing on that whole mountain that was still true. And while I worked, it started on me. It had Cole now. It had taken him 4 seconds ago, and it had already learned enough. It works that fast. And Cole's voice came out of the timber 20 feet away, low, hurt, the little rasp in it worse now, and it said, Wes, I'm off the trail. I'm hurt, man. Help me. I tied off the splint. I did not look at the trees. Wes, closer, were made to sound closer. Wes, please. I can't feel my legs. Don't leave me up here. I checked Marla's pulse below the break. I said to her, loud, so the 7 of them could hear it and hold on to it. That is not Cole. Cole is gone. I am not going into those trees, and neither are any of you. We are walking out. Right now. On our feet, hands on shoulders. We do not stop for a voice. If it is Cole, and it is not, but if it is, then Cole knows the rule too, because I taught it to him, and the rule is, you do not go to a voice. And Cole would be screaming at us right now to walk away. So we are going to do what Cole would tell us to do, and we are going to walk away. And Cole's voice from the trees said, Wes, don't leave me. You left the Beckett kid. Don't leave me too. It knew about the boy. I do not know how, unless it had been in my head the way it had been in my radio. Unless a thing that can take a voice off the air can take a name off me some other way, off the back of my hand, out of the box I keep clipped shut. It knew about Danny Beckett. It knew the one thing in the world that could turn me around on that mountain, the one door in me that had never fully closed, and it put Cole's voice on the worst thing I carry, and it swung that door. I stood up. My legs were already moving before I decided anything. That is true. The legs go before the man does, but they went the right way. They went toward my 7 people, and the gate, and the light, not toward the trees, and it was not courage. I know that much. It was 15 years, and a broken word, and a dead deputy, and the certain knowledge, bought at a price I am still paying, that the boy in the trees was not the boy, the same as the wife on the video was not being called by the man at the fire. I knew it was not Cole the way I knew the last stair in my own basement. And my feet, without counting, walk, I said. Everybody walked, at my light, now, and behind us, from the trees, in Cole's voice, and then under it in another voice, a boy's voice, 9 years old, 8 years gone, a voice I had spent 8 years not letting myself imagine. The drainage said my name one more time, soft, the way I have said names into country where I already knew there was no one left to answer. 7 of us started down the drainage in the dark, me at the front with the light. Behind me, 2 of the volunteers. Then Marla dragged on a litter we made from 2 trekking poles and a tarp, hauled by the next 2, and Dave at the back, the last of us, because Dave was steady, and I wanted the steadiest man where I could not see him. Everybody with a hand on the person in front, a chain of us going down the black creek bottom by touch and by my one light. And the rule was the light, follow the light, and under the light the truths, spoken out loud in a line, passed up and down the chain like a rope we were all holding. Say where your people are, I said down the chain. Out loud, keep saying it. My wife's in Elgin, Dave said. My wife's in Elgin. My wife's in Elgin. Kids at my sister's, said one of the volunteers. Kids at my sister's. They said their truths, and the drainage answered with lies, and we went down through the middle of the 2 of them. It threw Steph's voice at me. Cole, Steph, pregnant Steph, crying, saying Cole's name, asking where Cole was, and I said out loud, Steph is in La Grande, and she does not know yet, and I am the one who has to tell her, and that is not Steph. It threw Ruth at me, the real problem, the sat phone crackling to life in my chest pocket, with Ruth's voice saying she had troopers coming up. The 19, hold position, do not move. And I wanted it to be true so badly that I nearly held, and then I remembered that the sat phone had not rung. It had simply started talking. The sat phone does not do that. And I turned it off and put it away and kept walking at nothing, at the dark, at the memory of where the road was, because the map in my head was the last thing I had that the drainage could not get into. The first mile down went slow, and it went hard. The litter caught on everything, roots and deadfall and the drop-offs where the trail was not a trail, and the 2 men on the poles were spent from the day and from Roan and from the thing that had no name, and Marla was in and out of it with her broken leg, quiet and then screaming and then quiet, and the screaming was the worst because the screaming was real and the drainage learned from it. It had her by the second scream. It gave her back to us from off the slope, Marla's voice, hurt, from a place Marla was not, because Marla was on the litter in front of me where I could see her, and the copy of her called from the dark on the left, saying she had fallen, she needed help, she was down here, and the real Marla on the litter heard her own voice come out of the trees and made a sound I never want to hear a person make again. And one of the litter men let go of his pole to cross himself, and the litter dropped, and Marla screamed for real, and the copy on the slope screamed with her, matching, learning, getting it. And for one bad second I could not have said which scream was the woman and which was the mountain. Hands on the poles, I said. Look at her. Look at Marla. She is right here. The one on the slope is nothing. Pick up the pole. And the man picked up the pole, because I made my voice the voice I use when there is no room left for anything but doing. And we went on down into the narrowing, where the walls started to come in and the creek got louder. And the louder the creek got, the more the voices had to work with, because moving water is a thing that hides other sounds and gives them back changed. And I had known that about the drainage for 15 years, and had thought of it as a fact about acoustics, and now knew it as a fact about hunting, that the thing lived where it lived because the creek was its blind, the way a cat lives in tall grass. It tried Ruth on me in the narrows, the real trick, the good one. The sat phone again, but smarter now, not ringing, just alive in my pocket with Ruth's voice mid-sentence like I had missed the first half, saying troopers were staged at the gate, saying hold where I was, help was coming up, and I wanted it. I wanted it so much that I had the phone half out of my pocket before I caught the thing that was wrong, which was that the phone had not rung and had not chimed and had not done any of the things a phone does before a voice comes out of it. It had only started talking, and phones do not start talking. And I turned it off in my fist and put it away, and I said out loud to the chain, nothing that comes out of a machine. Nothing. Not even good news. Especially not good news. Because I had learned that too, up there, that the drainage had stopped trying to scare us down the wrong path, and started trying to comfort us into standing still. And comfort is the better bait. Comfort is what a tired, frightened person will walk 1,000 miles toward. And the thing had figured that out somewhere in the last hour. Had seen what worked and what did not, and adjusted. And I do not know what it is, but I know it is not stupid. I know it learns faster than anything alive has a right to, and I know that everything I did to keep my people moving, it watched and got better. We came into the worst of the narrows with the creek roaring off both walls, and my one light making a moving room 30 feet wide in the dark, and everybody in the chain was down to just the truths now. Said flat and steady like a rosary, my wife's in Elgin, kids and my sisters, Marla's right here, follow the light. And I counted the chain as we walked, reaching back down the line, because counting is what I do, and the count came out wrong. I did it by touch, reaching back, a hand on each shoulder in turn while we walked, my lips moving. 1, 2, 3, and I got to the litter, and past the litter, and I kept getting shoulders. There were more shoulders than there were people. I counted 7 of us, and I touched 8, and I stopped the chain in the loud, narrow dark, with the creek roaring off the walls, and I said, "Hold. Everybody hold. Nobody let go of the person you are holding. Nobody." The chain stopped. I could hear them breathing, all of them. The litter creaking, Marla's high, thin whine of pain, the creak. I turned around, and I ran my light up the line, slow, face to face, and I made each of them say their truth as the light hit them, and I went down the whole chain that way, the volunteers. Kids and my sisters, the 2 on the litter, Marla right here, and Dave at the back of the line, my wife's in Elgin, all of them, all their faces, all their truths. 7 faces, 7 people, everybody where they should be, everybody holding the right shoulder. And there was still one more, at the back of the chain, behind the last man, where nobody should have been, where the drainage should have been. There was a shape with its hand on the last man's shoulder, holding on, part of the chain, being led out with us. And it was the right height. It was the height of a person, and it had a face turned down and away from my light, the way a tired searcher turns from a light. And for 1 second, my own eye tried to make it into one of my people, tried to give it a name off the roster, because that is what an eye does. It fills the hole, and then it lifted its face into my light. Almost. Not all the way. Enough. And I saw the part of it that was almost a face, and the part of it that was not a face at all. The pale of it, and the long, wrong line of the front of it, like bone-worn smooth, like something that had gotten a face nearly right and given up before the middle, and its mouth, the part that was a mouth, was already moving, already shaping a word, and the word it was shaping, in Dave's voice, in the voice of the man whose shoulder it was holding, was, "My wife's in Elgin." I did not scream. I think there was no more room in me for it. I said, "Let go of him. Dave, whatever's got your shoulder, it is not one of us. Let go and get up here to me." And Dave, God bless him, Dave let go of the thing behind him without ever turning to look at it, because I had told him not to look. Weeks, it felt like I had been telling all of them not to look. And Dave came up the chain to me, fast and shaking, and the chain closed up over the gap, and I put my light on the back of the line again, and there was nothing there. There were 7 of us. The count was right. It had been right all along, by the numbers, and it had walked in our chain anyway, with its hand on a good man's shoulder, saying a good man's truth back at us. And it had been there for I do not know how long, one of us, held and holding, and the only reason I found it was that I count. That is all. That is the whole reason any of us walked out. Not courage, not skill. A habit of counting a thing twice that I have had since a boy went missing 8 years ago, and I could not stop counting the searchers because I was so afraid of losing one more. "Move," I said. "Down. Now. Do not stop again. I do not care what you hear. I do not care what you feel on your shoulder. You hold the person in front, and you follow the light. And if you feel a hand where a hand should not be, you say so, and you keep walking. Move. We moved. It came down the drainage with us the rest of the way, on the walls, in the voices, at the edges of the light, and it did not touch the chain again, because I walked backward half that mountain with my light on the back of the line and my count running out loud, 777, saying the number like the boys used to say the maple word. And the number was the last thing I had that it could not take, because a number is not a voice. A number is a truth I could hold in my mouth in the dark, and I held it all the way down, 7, until the walls opened out, and the creek quieted, and the ground leveled under my boots, and my light found the cattle guard and the gate on Forest Road 19, and the county trucks and the Forest Service rigs sitting cold in the pull-out where we had left them, and the real world, or the edge of it, the place where the drainage lets go. I loaded them out. I did it by the numbers, because the numbers were all I trusted. Marla into the back of a rig with a volunteer to hold her leg, the keys in the ignition where we leave them at a trailhead. Dave in the driver's seat, hand shaking too hard for the key, so I reached in and turned it for him. I put my hand on each of them one more time as they got in, a hand on a shoulder, a real hand on a real shoulder, and I said each of their truths back to them. Your wife's in Elgin. Your kids are at your sister's. And I told them to drive to the ranger station and not to stop, not for a person in the road, not for a light, not for anything, to drive to Ruth and to tell Ruth I was coming, and to tell Ruth, and I made Dave say this back to me twice, to tell Ruth that when I got there I would say what I brought her the morning after Beckett, and if I did not say it, if whoever came down off that mountain in my face and my voice did not say Maple Bar, he was not to be let in the door. They drove out. I watched the taillights go down the 19 and swing around the first bend and gone, and the sound of the engines faded, and I was alone at the gate in the dark with the drainage at my back. I should have gotten in my truck and gone. I know that. I have been asked why I did not, by troopers, and by Hollis, and by the county, and by myself. Most of all, by myself. And the answer is the answer that does not satisfy anyone, which is that I could not drive out and leave Cole up there without walking the gate one time. It was not since. It was 15 years. I have never once left a trailhead without checking the gate, and my partner was somewhere up that draw, or the drainage was wearing him, and I could not make my hands start the truck until I had walked back up and put them on the chain and known it was closed, because closing the gate was the only thing I had left that was shaped like taking care of him. So I walked back up to the gate on Forest Road 19, and it was chained the way I had left it, and I stood on the wrong side of it in the dark with my hand on the radio and did not key the mic, because Cole was calling my name from up the draw, and Cole was not up the draw. Wes. Off to the right, past the first bend, where the timber came down close to the road. Wes, I'm hurt. I'm off the trail. It had his voice, not near his voice, his voice. Wes, please, I can see your light. I turned my headlamp off, and I stood in the dark, which is the true dark, the half second after the light dies stretched out to fill a whole night, and I let my eyes go to what little the stars gave me, and I did not answer, and I did not move toward the draw, and the thing that had my partner's voice stood 20 feet away past a chained gate in the country it owned, and asked me, patient, certain, soft on the front of my name, to come and help him. And I put my hand flat on the cold pipe of the gate the way I would lay a hand on a coffin. Once, and I took it back, and I climbed over on the downhill side into the world, and I walked to my truck by starlight with my light off so it would have nothing to follow, and behind me, all the way down, it called me by every name I had. Wes. Then Steph's Cole, hurt. Then Ruth, at her desk, scared. Then a boy, 9 years old, 8 years gone, asking me why I never came back for him. It called me by every name I loved until I got the truck door open, and then it stopped, all at once, the way it stops, and in the quiet after it there was only the creek, running alone, up in the dark, keeping the drainage the way it has always kept it. And I got in and I drove out, and I did not look up the 19 in the mirror, not once, because I knew that whatever I saw in the mirror would be almost Cole, and almost was the thing I could not survive looking at. I got to the station a little after 4 in the morning. The lights were on. Ruth had the whole thing lit up like a holiday, every light in the place, because she is not a fool, and she knew what was coming down off that mountain, and she was not going to meet it in the dark. Dave and the others had made it. Marla was already in an ambulance to Legrand, and Ruth came out from behind the dispatch desk when I opened the door, and she stopped 6 feet from me, and she did not come and put her arms around me the way 20 years should have made her, because she is a professional, and because she had seen my face on the video feed from the parking lot, and she did not yet know if it was mine. "What did you bring me?" she said. "The morning after." "A maple bar," I said, and I didn't say anything, and I sat in the corner of your dispatch for an hour, and then I went back out and looked for him another 9 days. And then Ruth came and put her arms around me, and I let her, and I did not cry because there was still no room in me for it. But I stood in the door of the station at 4 in the morning and let a woman I had worked beside for 20 years hold me up for a minute, because my partner was on the mountain and I had come down without him. And she knew what that was. She was the only one alive who fully knew what that was, because she had been the voice on the radio for the Beckett boy too, and now there were 2 names, and she had been on the radio for both of them. And some weights come off only onto the one other person who was carrying the far end of them. The troopers came at dawn, then the county because of Rome, then more Forest Service than I had seen in one place in 15 years. They ran that drainage for 2 weeks. Dogs, a helicopter, 100 and some people at the peak of it, more than had ever been in that country at one time. They were good. They were thorough. They found the camps and the gear and the torn things wedged up the talus slopes. They found Roan's rifle where I had bagged it, and in the North Fold. Eventually, they found the collected things of Paula Trent and Gerald Hoyt and Tyler Cofield, a year's worth and 2 years' worth and 3 years' worth of the drainage is taking, gathered up a slope in a place with no reason weathering. They photographed all of it. They bagged all of it. They gave the families back a wallet, a boot, a wedding ring, the small hard proofs that let a family stop hoping, which is a cruel gift and the only one the drainage ever gives. I was there when they gave Paula Trent's husband her wedding ring. I did not have to be. It was a county matter by then, and not mine. But the man had spent a year in a town that had decided his wife left him because their marriage was bad, which was the story the closed case had handed everyone, and I had helped close that case, or my district had. And I could not stand behind a desk while a deputy put a ring in that man's hand and told him the truth, a year too late. So I drove down and I stood in the back of the room. He was a small man, older than I expected, and he held the ring in his palm and did not close his hand around it for a long time. The room was a county conference room, fluorescent, a long table, a box of tissues set out that nobody touched. The deputy who did the talking was young and kept his eyes on the paperwork the whole time, because he could not do the other thing, which was look at the husband. The husband had come in his church clothes, a gray sport coat gone too big in the shoulders, the way clothes go too big on a person who has stopped eating right, and his hands, when he took the ring, were a mechanic's hands, thick and scarred and careful, and they shook a little at the fingertips. Somebody at the county lab had cleaned the ring. I stood in the back and hated that, the cleaning, because it had gone up the mountain on her hand and come back in an envelope, and somebody had polished the mountain off it, and now it caught the light like it had come out of a jewelry case, instead of a year in the North Fold. And then he asked the only question that was his to ask, which was whether she had known at the end that he had not stopped looking. And there was no one in that room who could answer him, because the truth was that she had been up on that mountain the whole time the town was saying she walked away from him. And the truth was that the thing that took her had spent a year calling his house in her voice, 4 or 5 rings, and breathing and gone, and he had answered every time, and he had let himself believe every time, and that belief was the thing the closed case had built and the drainage had fed on. I watched that man learn, in one afternoon that he had been right to hope, and that he had been punished for it for a year by everyone he knew. We had driven 4 hours to hand him a small gold proof that his suffering had been earned honestly. That is the part I could not get past on the drive home. Not that the drainage took her, that it arranged for the town to blame him for a year first. They did not find Cole. They did not find the Pruitts. They did not find Gilroan. They found the shapes of where people had been, and never the people. Because that is what the drainage makes. Absences. And an absence cannot be carried out on a litter. And after 2 weeks, the helicopter went home, and 100 people went home, and the search went from active to what they call limited continuous, which is a phrase that means we have stopped. And then it went to suspended, which is a phrase that means we have stopped, and we are not going to say so to the families. And I sat in on the meeting where they decided that, and I did not fight it, because I had run enough of these to know when a drainage has closed over something for good, and this one had closed over 5 people that we knew of, and God knows how many that we did not. And it was not going to give any of them back. Not to a helicopter, not to a dog, not to me. A trooper took my statement in the back of the station 2 days after I came down, a younger man, careful, and I told him everything. The video, and the voices, and the word that broke, and the count that came out, one too many in the Narrows, all of it, the parts that fit and the parts that did not, because I was done keeping the box clip shut, and I wanted one person with a badge and a recorder to have heard the whole true thing once. And he listened, and he did not stop me, and he did not ask me if I had been drinking or if I had slept, and he wrote almost nothing down. That was the part I keep. I told another man that a thing on a mountain had learned my partner's voice and called it back to me across a chained gate, and he did not write it down, did not argue, did not reach for a reason. Just let the recorder run and looked at his hands. And at the end he turned the recorder off and he sat there a minute, and then he said, not as a question, you worked the Beckett thing 8 years back. Different drainage, same unit. I said I had. He nodded, like something had been confirmed that he had suspected for a long time, and he said, my uncle was on that search, and he did not say anything else, and he gathered his things and left. And I understood that I had just met another man carrying his own far end of a weight he would never file, and that the country was full of us, quiet, badged, not writing it down. The report, when it was written, was a good report. The people who wrote it were not fools, and they were not cowards. They were professionals doing the only thing professionals can do with a thing like this, which is to write down the parts that fit and leave a quiet space where the rest goes. The report said the Pruitts and Cole Merrick and the others were presumed deceased, lost in rugged terrain, probable exposure, and probable falls, in a drainage with a documented history of disorienting acoustics and dangerous topography. The report noted the unusual wounds on recovered gear and attributed them, provisionally, pending analysis, to predation by an unidentified large animal, possibly a bear exhibiting atypical behavior. The report recommended the permanent closure of the Ruby Creek drainage above Cold Springs, which stands to this day, gated, posted, a hole cut out of the map of my district. And that recommendation is the one part of the whole report that I believe was written by someone who understood, because good country does not get permanently closed over acoustics. It gets closed over something that cannot be written down. I went through the report 3 times. It is a true report. Every fact in it is a fact. And it is a lie. The way the 3 closed cases were a lie. A bad marriage and a cold old man and a runaway kid. All true, all facts, all lies. Because the truth of the drainage is not a thing that goes in a report. The truth of the drainage is that it learns a voice and gives it back to the one who loves it. And it will say Maple Bart to me in my dead deputy's mouth. And there is no box on any form for that. And there never will be, and the drainage gets to keep doing it, 1 October at a time, one explainable person at a time. And I was 15 years learning that the quiet at the top of it was not the walls. I told Steph myself, I would not let it be a trooper. I drove to La Grande. and I sat in the little rental she and Cole had, with the crib already up in the second bedroom, put together and waiting. And I told her that Cole was gone, and I told her the parts that fit, the terrain, the search, the 2 weeks, because the parts that did not fit were mine to carry and not hers to hear 4 months from her due date. She asked me if he suffered. I said no. That is the one lie I told that I would tell again, because I do not know if it is a lie, and because there are worse things than a lie told to a pregnant widow at her kitchen table, and one of them is the truth. She asked me if we would find him. I said the country up there does not give people back, and I held her hand while she understood that, and I stayed until her mother came, and then I drove home, and I did not turn the radio on in the truck, because I have not been able to turn the radio on since, not the news, not the weather, not anything with a voice coming out of it. And Shell drives now when we go anywhere together, and she does not ask why, because she had read the report too, the parts that fit, and she has stopped leaving the retirement papers under the salt shaker. Katie came home from the college in La Grande the weekend after and stayed a week. She is 19, my daughter, and she sat with me on the porch in the evenings and did not make me talk, which she gets from her mother. And one night she put her head on my shoulder the way she did when she was small, and I sat still because it was good, and because I had learned up on that mountain what it costs up there, that the people I love can be turned into bait against me, and I have not been able to unlearn it. And now when my own daughter says my name from another room in my own house, there is a half second before I answer, where I check, where I make sure I saw her go into that room, where I count. She does not know I do it. I hope she never knows I do it. It is the smallest thing, and it is the whole size of what the drainage did to me, that I flinch once at my daughter's voice in the half second before I let myself believe it is hers. I did not sign the papers. Shell stopped leaving them out, and I did not go looking for them, and we have not talked about it, and I am still a ranger, at an age when most men have hung it up, running the open half of a district with a hole cut out of the middle of it. People ask me, the younger ones, why I do not pull the pin with all my years in, and I tell them I am not ready, which is true and is not the reason. The reason is the gate on Forest Road 19. Somebody has to be the one who knows what it is. When they close a road for acoustics and dangerous terrain, the closure is only paper, and paper does not keep people out. A chain and a sign have never once kept out the kind of person who drives 400 miles to see a meadow and reads a posted closure as a dare. They will go up there some October, a couple with no permit, and a sister who waits a day too long to call. And when they do, I want the man who takes that call to be someone who does not think it is the walls. So I stay. I run the open country and I keep the badge, and once or twice a season I drive up the 19 to the gate, and I get out, and I stand on the downhill side of the chain, and I do not go past it, and I do not call out, and I listen to the creek run alone up in there, and then I get back in the truck and I drive home, and Shell does not ask, and I do not tell. The voicemail came in the following spring, around the time Steph had the baby, a boy. She named him for his father. It came to the station line in the dead middle of the night, and the machine got it, and Ruth found it in the morning, and Ruth listened to the first 2 seconds of it and no more. And then she called me before she called anyone, and she said, "Wes, I need you to decide something, and I will do whatever you say." The number it came from does not exist. The phone company has no record of a call, but there is a message on the machine at the Ruby Creek station, 41 seconds long, the same length as a video I have played too many times, and it is Cole's voice, the little scrape in it, soft on the front of my name, and I have not listened past where Ruth stopped, and I have not let her delete it, and it sits on that machine, saved, not deleted, not listened to, the way a light stays burning in a room nobody will go into. Ruth wanted to know if she should tell Steph. I said no. I said Steph has a boy to raise and a father to bury in her mind, and she does not need to know that the mountain kept a little of his voice and learned how to dial. Ruth agreed. It is the second lie we keep together now. The Maple Bar is not a secret anymore. The report saw to that. But the voicemail is, and it will stay one, because there are things a grieving family should never be handed, and I carried this one myself, up at the far end, where the weight is. I still write the first name on the back of my hand. Every call, every overdue party, every lost day hiker in the open country where the drainage cannot reach. I write the first name in pen, because a hand does not run out of batteries, and because of 2 boys now, one 9 and one 31, that I could not bring down off 2 different mountains 8 years apart. The ink comes off in a day or 2. It always has. I used to think that was a mercy, the coming off, the way a name fades and lets a man sleep. I do not think that anymore. I think a name is a thing that can be learned by whatever is patient enough to listen, and given back in the dark to the one who loved it, and I keep mine off the air now, all of it, the way a door stays locked, in a house that has never once had any crime in it. When I am up at the gate on the 19 and the creek is running alone in there and I know it is listening, the way I have known since the first cold night on the bench that it is always listening. I do not say my own name, and I do not say Cole's, and I do not say the boys. I stand on the downhill side of the chain, in the last of the light, and I count just that. I count the trucks in the pullout, mine and no others. I count the miles down to the station in my head. I count the years I have left before I am too old to be the one who takes the call. I hold the numbers in my mouth, because a number is not a voice, and I have learned, at a price I go on paying, that a number is the last true thing I have to hold in the dark at the top of that drainage, when everything else I trust has learned to lie to me in the voices of the people I would die for. Then I turn my headlamp off before I walk back to the truck, so it will have nothing to follow, and I drive down out of that country slow, the way I have driven away from every grave I ever stood over, without looking back at the dark, 'cause I know by now what I would see there. It would be almost coal, and almost is the thing I cannot look at. Almost is the whole of what lives up there. Almost is what it has always been.